The first thing I saw when I pulled into my driveway was smoke. Thick black smoke billowing from my detached garage. Flames licking up into the evening sky. My heart nearly stopped. I slammed the truck into park and jumped out, sprinting toward the inferno. My garage gone. My tools, my motorcycle, my father's old workbench, all of it up in flames. Just as I reached for the hose, I heard her voice. Maybe next time you will think twice before neglecting your homeowner association dues, Everett. I turned, fury boiling in my veins. There she was, Ruth Gallagher, the homeowner association president, standing at the edge of my driveway with her arms crossed, watching my life burn like she was admiring a sunset. You did this, I growled. She scoffed. The association had to take action. Everett, you were warned. We put multiple notices on your door. We even offered you a payment plan. I clenched my fists. I told you I did not owe a dime. The fees you are demanding are not even in the bylaws. She waved a hand dismissively. You live under our jurisdiction. That means you follow our rules. If you refuse, there are consequences. I could barely hear her over the crackling flames and the distant wail of sirens. The fire department arrived moments later, but the damage was already done. My garage was a charred skeleton. My tools melted beyond recognition. But I was not about to let this slide. As the firefighters doused the last embers, I made a decision. Ruth and her corrupt homeowner association had just declared war. They thought they could bully me into submission, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I was not just some pushover homeowner. I had resources. I had contacts. And most importantly, I had a plan. They burned down my garage fine. I was about to burn their entire little empire to the ground. The moment the fire was fully extinguished, I got to work. There was no time to waste. Every second that passed was another opportunity for Ruth and the homeowner association to cover their tracks. I needed proof. I needed leverage. And most of all, I needed to hit them where it hurt. I started by taking photos of the wreckage, capturing every angle. The scorch marks on the pavement, the collapsed beams, the warped remains of my motorcycle. The fire department had already confirmed what I suspected. The fire was no accident. There were traces of accelerant. Someone had set this deliberately. I had a pretty good idea who. While the firefighters packed up their gear, I approached the fire chief. He was a seasoned guy, someone who had seen it all. When I asked if he could provide a formal report on the cause of the fire, he nodded and assured me it would be ready within a few days. That was good enough for now. Next, I turned to my security cameras. They were mounted on my house, angled toward the driveway and part of my backyard. I scrolled through the footage, scanning for anything unusual, and then there it was. Just after midnight the night before, a shadowy figure sneaked onto my property. The grainy image caught them splashing something along the base of my garage before flicking a lighter. The fire roared to life in an instant. I rewound the footage and enhanced the image as best as I could. The figure was wearing a hoodie, but the outline was familiar. The height, the build, one of Ruth's lackeys, a guy named Dale, who always seemed to be lingering around homeowner association meetings, nodding along to every ridiculous rule she proposed. That was all I needed. I copied the footage onto a flash drive and made my next move. Most people do not realize that homeowner associations often own the land beneath common areas, the clubhouse, the community park, even the roads in some cases. And if a homeowner association falls into financial trouble, that land can be sold. I had been doing my research on this particular homeowner association for months, ever since they first started harassing me over bogus fees. Their financial situation was not great. Ruth had been mismanaging funds, funneling money into beautification projects that never seemed to materialize. I had a strong suspicion they were teetering on bankruptcy. I was about to push them over the edge. The next morning, I made some calls. A friend of mine worked in commercial real estate, and after some digging, he confirmed what I hoped: several of the homeowner association's properties had liens against them. The community clubhouse, the small park, and even the plot of land where their office sat were all at risk of foreclosure due to unpaid taxes. That was my opening. I immediately contacted the county and made an offer to purchase the land directly. It took a bit of legal maneuvering, but within 48 hours, the paperwork was in motion. The moment the sale was finalized, I would own the land the homeowner association relied on, but I was not done yet. While waiting for the sale to process, I took the security footage and fire report to the police. The officer at the desk took one look at the video and called in a detective. Arson was a serious charge, and with clear evidence tying Dale to the crime, it did not take long for an arrest warrant to be issued. By the end of the week, Dale was in handcuffs. That is when everything started to unravel. With Dale behind bars, rumors spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. People started questioning Ruth's leadership, wondering if the homeowner association had gone too far. A few residents even approached me quietly, admitting they had been pressured into paying illegitimate fines. And then the final blow landed. The county approved my purchase. The homeowner association's office, their clubhouse, and the community park all belong to me now. And with that, I had the power to do what every homeowner in the neighborhood had secretly wished for. I shut them down. I posted an official notice on the homeowner association's office door, informing them that they were trespassing on private property. They had 48 hours to vacate. Ruth showed up at my house, red-faced and furious, demanding to know how this was possible. I handed her the deed. She snatched it, scanning the legal text with shaking hands. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. I did not bother gloating. I did not need to. The look on her face was enough. The homeowner association was finished. Ruth's grip on the deed tightened, her knuckles turning white. The realization hit her in waves. First disbelief, then desperation. She flipped through the pages as if searching for some loophole, some technicality that could undo what I had done. But it was all there in black and white. The land she and her homeowner association had lorded over for years no longer belonged to them. Her voice, usually dripping with condescension, came out uneven. This cannot be legal. I folded my arms, keeping my stance firm. It is completely legal. The county records are updated. The purchase was approved. You do not own this land anymore, Ruth. I do. She shook her head, looking up with wild eyes. You cannot just take what belongs to the community. I let out a slow breath, keeping my temper in check. I did not take anything. I bought it. Your homeowner association let its finances rot from the inside out. You mismanaged funds, ignored debts, and let liens pile up. You did this to yourself. For the first time, Ruth had no snappy response. The silence stretched between us, broken only by the distant hum of passing cars. She opened her mouth, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but nothing came out. Then, just as quickly as the panic had set in, she straightened her back and forced on the mask of authority she always hid behind. This is not over, she said, her tone sharp, but unsteady. The homeowner association has rights. We will challenge this in court. I did not even blink. Go ahead. But I would be careful. Legal battles cost money, and last I checked, your homeowner association does not have much of that left. Her nostrils flared, but she had no comeback. She turned on her heel and stormed off, her heels clicking against the pavement in rapid succession. I watched her go, knowing full well that this was not the last I would see of her. Ruth was not the type to accept defeat gracefully, but she no longer had the power she thought she did. With the deed in hand, I wasted no time. I drafted an official eviction notice and had it posted on the homeowner association's office. The community clubhouse, which they used for their so-called meetings, was now off limits to them. The small park, which they had turned into a restricted access area, was now open to all residents without any homeowner association interference. By the time the first notices went up, the neighborhood was buzzing. People gathered in small groups, whispering, speculating, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I was not one for grand speeches, but I knew I had to set the record straight. So that evening, I stood outside what had once been the homeowner association office and addressed the residents who had gathered. I know a lot of you have questions. I started, making sure to meet their eyes. For years, this homeowner association has operated like a dictatorship. They have abused their power, enforced bogus fines, and bullied homeowners into submission. That ends today. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement. Others still looked uncertain, hesitant to believe that the nightmare was truly over. I now own the land that the Homeowner Association controlled. That means they no longer have authority over this community. No more arbitrary fines. No more threats. No more harassment. A man in the front, a retired veteran named Frank, stepped forward. What about the Homeowner Association board? Can they still enforce rules? I shook my head. They can try, but without the land, they have no standing. Their authority only existed as long as they controlled these properties. Now that they do not, they are just another group of homeowners like the rest of us. That was the moment the atmosphere shifted. Relief spread across faces. Tension that had gripped the community for years began to ease. Then, from the back of the crowd, a woman called out, "What about Ruth?" I hesitated for a moment, then answered honestly. She is not going to give up easily, but she has lost her leverage. If she tries anything, we will handle it the right way with the law, not intimidation. That seemed to satisfy them. One by one, residents started to talk, share stories of the fines they had been forced to pay, the threats they had received. Some admitted they had wanted to fight back, but had been too afraid of retaliation. Now they were not afraid anymore. Over the next few days, I worked on officially dissolving the Homeowner Association. It was not a simple process, but with their financial collapse and loss of authority, they had little choice but to disband. Ruth, true to form, did not go down without a fight. She tried rallying the remaining board members, claiming that I had somehow stolen community property. She even attempted to file an injunction to stop the dissolution, but the courts were not on her side. The evidence of her mismanagement, the financial records, the unpaid debts, they all painted a damning picture. Her case was thrown out before it even gained traction. And just like that, the Homeowner Association was officially dead. The neighborhood transformed almost overnight. The oppressive atmosphere lifted. People who had once avoided each other out of fear of Homeowner Association retribution now talked freely. Driveways were no longer patrolled for violations, and homeowners started making improvements to their properties without interference. It was the community we had all wanted from the start, one free from tyranny. As for Ruth, she vanished soon after the Homeowner Association collapsed. Some said she moved out of town to avoid the humiliation. Others claimed they saw her trying to start over in another neighborhood, but no one really cared. We were finally free. With the Homeowner Association officially dissolved, the neighborhood settled into a new rhythm. Conversations that used to happen in hushed whispers were now open and unfiltered. People started organizing their own gatherings at the community clubhouse, no longer needing approval from a board that no longer existed. The tension that had gripped the streets for years slowly faded, replaced by a sense of freedom that no one had realized they were missing. But I knew Ruth was not done. People like her did not just disappear quietly. They schemed, they plotted, and they waited for an opportunity to strike back. That opportunity came sooner than I expected. A few weeks after the Homeowner Association's downfall, I received a letter in the mail. Not an official document, not a legal summon, just a regular envelope with my name scrawled on it in jagged, almost frantic handwriting. I opened it and scanned the contents. It was a threat, not a direct one, but the implication was clear. Ruth was promising that the neighborhood would fall into chaos without the Homeowner Association. She claimed that without proper leadership, the value of our homes would plummet, crime would rise, and the streets would become unrecognizable. She blamed me for everything, insisting that I had doomed the community. I tossed the letter onto my desk and leaned back in my chair. Ruth was flailing. She had lost everything: her power, her influence, her control. This letter was not a plan. It was a desperate attempt to scare me into believing that she still mattered. She did not. But I was not about to ignore her either. That evening, I made my rounds through the neighborhood, checking in with the residents who had been the most vocal against the Homeowner Association. The retired veteran Frank was doing fine, better than fine. Actually, he had repainted his house without having to get approval and was already working on a backyard project he had been putting off for years. Mrs. Patel, who had been fined countless times for having unauthorized plants, was now expanding her garden without fear of some clipboard-wielding enforcer showing up at her door. No one was complaining about chaos. No homes had suddenly collapsed in value. The neighborhood was thriving without the homeowner association breathing down everyone's necks. But Ruth was not finished. A few days later, I heard from one of my contacts at the county office. Apparently, Ruth had been making inquiries about forming a new homeowner association. She could not bring back the old one. It was legally dissolved, but she was trying to start fresh, hoping to recruit enough homeowners to sign on voluntarily. I was not about to let that happen. The next morning, I gathered a few of the most trusted residents and let them know what was going on. We agreed on a plan, a simple one, but effective. If Ruth wanted to convince people to join her new homeowner association, we would make sure they had all the facts first. We went door to door, explaining what she was trying to do and reminding people exactly what the old homeowner association had been like. We shared the financial records we had uncovered, the fraudulent fines, the mismanagement. We reminded them that Ruth had stood by while my garage burned, using it as a bargaining chip instead of showing even a shred of concern. The response was overwhelming. By the end of the week, nearly every homeowner had signed a petition refusing to join any new homeowner association, effectively killing Ruth's plan before it could even begin. When she found out, she showed up at my house again. This time, there was no mask of authority, no thinly veiled threats. She looked exhausted, defeated. She accused me of ruining the neighborhood, of turning people against her, of dismantling something that she had spent years building. I did not argue. I just stood there and let her talk until she ran out of words. Then I told her the truth. She had not built anything. She had controlled, manipulated, and extorted. And now, without her manufactured power, she had nothing. She left without another word. A week later, her house went up for sale. She was gone by the end of the month, and the neighborhood, it was better than ever. The absence of Ruth was like a weight lifting from the neighborhood. But I knew better than to think that meant everything would be smooth sailing. Even with the homeowner association gone, habits did not change overnight. Some people had spent years living under the constant fear of fines and violations, and it was going to take time before they fully embraced their newfound freedom. That is why when I saw a group of homeowners gathering near what used to be the homeowner association office, I decided to check it out. As I walked up, I could hear the uncertainty in their voices. A man named Greg, who had always been one of the quieter residents, was frowning at a pile of old documents someone had pulled out. He was flipping through them like he was searching for something important. Next to him, a woman named Denise, who had been fined so many times for small infractions that she had nearly moved away, had her arms crossed. Greg looked up as I approached, his expression conflicted. "There's a lot of stuff here," he said. "Old records, financial statements, even letters they never sent out. Some of it looks bad." Denise gave a sharp nod, her frustration clear. They were keeping tabs on people, Everett, like way beyond what they were supposed to. Notes about who paid without question, who pushed back, even stuff about people's personal lives. It is creepy. I took one of the folders and skimmed through it. What I saw made my jaw tighten. There were pages detailing how they had targeted certain homeowners, people they thought were less likely to fight back. There were notes about who had family troubles, who had lost jobs, and who might be too overwhelmed to challenge bogus fines. It was not just about enforcing rules. It was about control. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. "We need to make sure everyone knows about this," I said. "If people see just how deep this went, they will never let something like this happen again." Greg hesitated. "But what if this just stirs everything up again? Some people might not want to deal with it anymore. They might just want to move on." Denise did not look convinced. "People deserve to know," she said. "If we do not bring it out into the open, then the next person who tries to do what Ruth did will have an easier time convincing people to follow them." I nodded. "She is right. We are not doing this to hold a grudge. We are doing this so no one ever tries to pull something like this again." Over the next few nights, we went through every single document, cataloging everything that showed just how corrupt the homeowner association had been. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. There were records of fines that had been completely fabricated, instances where repairs that residents had paid for were never actually done, and even indications that money had been funneled into personal expenses for board members. The worst part, there were signs that Ruth had been planning to expand her control even further before everything fell apart. She had been looking into ways to annex nearby streets into the Homeowner Association's domain, trying to find legal loopholes that would have forced even more homeowners under her rule. By the time we had finished gathering everything, it was clear that this was bigger than just a few bad decisions. This had been an organized effort to exploit the people living here. We decided to hold a community meeting at the clubhouse. It was not a homeowner association meeting. Those were gone for good. But it was a chance for everyone to come together and see the truth for themselves. The turnout was larger than I expected. People filled the clubhouse, some standing along the walls. When all the seats were taken, there was an energy in the air, a mix of curiosity, anger, and determination. I stood at the front, the documents in front of me. I know some of you probably do not want to think about the Homeowner Association anymore, I started, and I do not blame you. But there is something you all need to see. I held up one of the pages, a list of names with notes next to them. They kept records on all of us, who would fight back, who would not, who was struggling, who they could take advantage of. This was not about keeping the neighborhood nice. It was about control. Murmurs spread through the crowd, hushed at first, then growing louder. People leaned in, whispering to each other as they looked at the documents we had set out on tables. A man in the back, someone I did not know well, raised his hand. "What do we do now?" Denise answered before I could. "We make sure this never happens again." That was the moment everything shifted. People who had been hesitant, who had stayed quiet while the Homeowner Association was in power, started speaking up. They shared their own stories, how they had been threatened, how they had been pressured into paying fines. They did not know how they had felt powerless. By the end of the night, it was clear that no one wanted to go back to the way things had been. We put together a plan not to form another homeowner association, but to create a neighborhood committee that was not about enforcement or control. It would be purely voluntary, meant to help with organizing events, maintaining communal spaces, and making sure that if any future group tried to take over, they would not stand a chance. For the first time in years, people felt like they had a voice. The neighborhood changed after that. You could see it in the way people interacted. They were not just neighbors. They were a community. And Ruth, she was nothing more than a bad memory. The neighborhood had changed. But I was not naive enough to think the battle was completely over. A system like the one Ruth had built did not just disappear overnight. There would always be remnants of it. People who had benefited from the Homeowner Association's control. People who thrived on enforcing rules and dictating how their neighbors lived. They had been quiet ever since Ruth was forced to leave, but I had no doubt they were watching, waiting for an opportunity to claw back some form of authority. That opportunity came in the form of a lawsuit. It arrived in a thick envelope, hand-delivered by a courier. I knew it was not good news before I even opened it. The weight of the papers, the official letterhead, it all screamed legal trouble. Inside was a formal complaint filed by a small group of former Homeowner Association board members. They were suing me, claiming that my purchase of the land had been fraudulent, that I had illegally displaced a governing body, and that I had irreparably damaged the value of the neighborhood. I read through the pages, my jaw tightening with every paragraph. Their argument was flimsy at best, but that did not mean they were not a threat. They were not trying to win. They were trying to bury me in legal fees, force me into a settlement, and maybe even get me to give up the properties I had legally purchased. They wanted control back, even without Ruth leading them. I was not about to let that happen. I had dealt with their kind before, people who thought that if they threw enough paperwork at a problem, they could make it disappear. But I had something they did not expect. A solid legal foundation and a stubborn refusal to back down. Instead of panicking, I made a few phone calls. One of them was to an attorney I had worked with in the past, someone who specialized in property disputes and homeowner association law. When I explained the situation, he let out a low chuckle. "They are desperate," he said. "This is not an actual legal battle. It is a scare tactic. Do you want to go on the offensive?" I did not even hesitate. Absolutely. That same week, my attorney drafted a counterclaim. If they wanted to drag me into court, I was going to make sure they regretted it. The first thing we did was file a motion to dismiss. The lawsuit was based on nothing but speculation and baseless accusations. The land purchase had gone through all the proper channels. The sale had been approved legally, and there was no evidence of wrongdoing. But I did not stop there. I also filed a defamation claim. Their lawsuit was not just an attempt to challenge my ownership. It was an attack on my character. They were trying to make it look like I had done something shady when in reality they were the ones who had mismanaged funds and abused their power. The court date was set, and while we waited, I used the time to gather even more evidence. I went back through the documents we had uncovered after the Homeowner Association's fall, highlighting every instance of financial misconduct, every instance where board members had abused their positions for personal gain. The day of the hearing arrived, and I walked into that courtroom with confidence. The former board members had hired their own attorney, a slick-looking guy who tried to paint me as some sort of villain who had stolen the Homeowner Association's authority. He spoke about community values and the integrity of shared spaces, trying to convince the judge that I had destroyed something valuable. When it was my turn, I did not waste time with flowery words. I laid out the facts. I presented the financial records showing how the Homeowner Association had been on the brink of collapse due to their own mismanagement. I provided evidence of their fraudulent fines, their intimidation tactics, and their attempts to illegally annex more properties into their control. Then I played the security footage of my garage burning down. The courtroom was silent as the grainy video showed Dale, one of Ruth's former enforcers, sneaking onto my property with a canister of accelerant. I turned to the judge, my voice steady. This is what their community integrity looked like. This is what they did to homeowners who refused to bow to their demands. The judge did not even need time to deliberate. The lawsuit was dismissed on the spot. But that was not the end of it. With my defamation claims still standing, the former board members were now in a precarious position. They had tried to come after me with baseless accusations, and now they were the ones facing potential financial consequences. Rather than drag things out, they offered a settlement. I did not want their money. Instead, I made them sign an agreement stating that they would never attempt to form another homeowner association in our neighborhood again. They had to acknowledge in writing that they had no legal authority over any homeowner here. They signed without hesitation. And just like that, any lingering threat of a homeowner association resurgence was crushed. The neighborhood moved on without the looming threat of fines or inspections. People started investing in their homes again, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The community thrived, not under the watchful eye of a board, but through genuine cooperation and mutual respect. As for me, I finally got around to rebuilding my garage. It took time, but when it was finished, it was better than before, stronger, a symbol of what I had fought for. One evening, as I stood in the driveway admiring my work, Frank walked up, hands in his pockets. He glanced at the garage, then at me. "You really did it," he said. "Took them down for good," I shrugged. "They did it to themselves." He nodded, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "Still feels good, does it not?" I looked around at the quiet, peaceful street, at the homes that no longer bore the weight of an oppressive homeowner association, and I nodded. "Yes, it really does."